So, after thousands of Lancer rounds have been fired, hundreds of swarm heads have exploded, Warden Breaker maces have been smashed, and the Hammer of Dawn has blasted everything in its path into oblivion, and of course, chainsaws being shredded, I have finally completed the campaign for Gears 5, and it was incredible. And here's why. Hey squad, Sykes here, and a kindly reminder that if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, head over to InstallationX and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell for notifications. Also, with today's video, there will be moments of strong language and scenes of violence in typical Gears fashion, and not forgetting the all-important spoiler alert, as I will be doing an in-depth review of the campaign for Gears 5. So with that all being said and out of the way, let's jump right into it. I want to start with the big element that makes Gears 5's campaign so incredible, and that is its story and characters. There's no denying that Xbox fans have been craving for a real top quality narrative experience from its first party studios for many years now, and with Gears 5 those prayers to the gaming gods have finally been answered. The Coalition has masterfully created a campaign that is up there with recent narrative heavyweights, and it's down to a number of great pieces of acting, writing and excellent character development. I'm not going to dive deep into the whole synopsis of the plot of the campaign. A quick search online will give you all the facts that you will need to know, but I will be focusing on the creative decisions that have made this campaign so incredible. The story of Gears 5 follows a new pattern, deviating away from the traditional 5 acts down to 4. This doesn't mean the campaign is shorter, oh no, my playthrough clocked in at around 12 hours. Unlike so many modern campaigns attached to multiplayer experiences, Gears 5's campaign is given real time to tell its story and develop its characters. This has helped flesh out existing characters, dive deeper into what makes them tick, and even have time to introduce new characters that by the end of the game you are invested in. We will start with the main protagonist from Gears 4, which was JD Phoenix, played by Liam McIntyre. The game opens up controlling JD and leading the team to get the Hammer of Dawn back online after a few missions and an all-out attack by the Swarm on the COG stronghold of Settlement 2. JD instructs Damon Baird to use the unprepared hammer to fire on the Swarm horde. After the successful attack, the hammer malfunctions, leading to deaths of civilians, fellow Gears, and seriously injuring JD. The relationship between the core group of JD, Kate and Del are soon strained after JD returns as a fully fledged Gear under the manipulation of First Minister Jin and buddied up to resident arsehole Foz, played by Raul Coley. A rift soon emerges between JD and Kate, which leads to Kate to forge her own path on tracking down the cause of her visions. JD, after learning the truth of Kate's Locust Medallion, becomes more and more paranoid about Kate's role in the events of the Swarm and pushes their friendship to the brink. But after being away for the rest of Act 2, JD returns to Kate and Del in Act 3, desperate to atone for his mistake and to reconcile with his friends, doing so successfully by fighting by their side. However, in Gears 5, Kate Diaz is undoubtedly the star of the show. Kate's link to the Swarm is greater examined in Gears 5. After being captured by a Snatcher, she is able to control a series of Swarm beings, resulting in a Swarm warden killing her uncle Oscar. Kate turns her back on the COG after becoming disillusioned with the actions of JD in particular, going on somewhat of a soul search to figure out her past and her links to the Swarm. This brings her into the spooky secret lab of the returning Niall Sampson, mad scientist from Gears of War 2. Kate's quest to reveal her heritage as the granddaughter of Queen Mira pushes her to the brink mentally and physically. Kate's emotions and inner turmoil are brilliantly portrayed by actress Laura Bailey, who brings a standout performance to the table in Gears 5. After severing her ties to the Swarm and killing the absolutely insane matriarch, Kate's focus returns to stopping her resurrected mother Queen Rhaena. Kate remains a badass woman in a predominantly male cast, showing that she can own it as a leader and a soldier in the leading role. Del, played by Eugene Byard, brings up the rear of the new young trio as the ever-reliable comedic relief, obscene amount of nerdy knowledge, and as the friend you want by your side when all hell breaks loose. However, the friendship between Del and JD is the first that is thrown into the blender when it is revealed by Foz that JD was the one that ordered the attack on a group of protesters in Settlement 2, which started the chain of events that led to JD and Del leaving the COG before the beginning of Gears 4. Del turns his back on JD after feeling deeply hurt and helps Kate on her journey for answers. Del is the strong foundation that holds the whole campaign together, being the ever-present character throughout the whole of Acts 1 to 3. His witty comebacks, bag of useless knowledge and trivia help bring a lighter side to the story in the midst of all the blood, guts and gore. Now, if you've gotten this far and you've completed the Gears 5 campaign, then you'll be likely wondering why I haven't talked about that mind-fucking decision in Act 4. But don't worry, as I'll be saving that for a video all of its own. Gears 5's campaign also excels in its development of the old guard and secondary characters, both new and returning. Marcus Phoenix is yet again incredibly portrayed with the voice of John DiMaggio and has, in my view, one of the best scenes in the history of video games. Period.
We're gonna need a test fire.
Forget test fires. We need an actual target.
If we're selecting targets, shouldn't someone with real military authority be here?
It's Foz, right?
Yes, sir.
Shut the fuck up, Foz.
Yep, sir.
Marcus's role has shifted from introducing the new guard in Gears 4 to the more paternal voice of wisdom and experience in Gears 5. Marcus plays as a surrogate father to the mentally vulnerable Kate, as well as the voice of authority and guidance to the others. He is also joined by the more present Baird, who like Marcus takes up a more narrative guidance role over comms. Baird, like Marcus, is greater developed in Gears 5, this time with a focus on his mistake of firing the Hammer of Dawn back in Act 1, when he knew it was a bad decision, and slowly coming to terms with the consequences of his mistakes. Cole and Carmine return as well, but only as support characters, with Cole up to his more brash and creative acts of violence, and Clayton Carmine as a continued badass, but this time with a subtle change to a more grounded gear with the experience of past conflicts weighing on his aging body. We also get some new characters, firstly in the form of Foz, who acts as the typical big, brash, cocky military type with an ego the size of a broom arc. He's a straight up dick, like a massive fucking dick. However, he's that kind of mate that has enough redeemable qualities that you put up with him being a bit of a dick. Foz's transition from Act 1 to the end of Act 4 shows a guy who is coming to terms with actually being part of a team and something bigger than himself, getting into some witty dialogue and a saving each other's ass routine with Del to being publicly torn a new one by Marcus. With Foz, you can really tell how strong Coalition storytelling is when you are liking a guy at the end that you despised at the start. We are also introduced to Paddock, the old grizzled UIR vet and former squad mate of Baird from the Vazcar Desert, who hates and distrusts the COG but is able to put his ideological differences aside for the greater good of stopping the swarm. We will likely see more of Paddock in Gears 6. Finally, however, a character we won't be seeing again is the trusty robotic companion Jack, who emotionally sacrifices himself so the Hammer of Dawn could target and kill Queen Rhaena's pet Kraken monster. You know when you've got a great story on your hands when you are emotionally invested in the death of a robot. R.I.P. Jack, and R.I.P. Lizzie Carmine, taken from us in the malfunctioning Hammer of Dawn event in Act 1. There I was, being a dumbass, thinking that the curse of Carmine had been lifted with the survivor of Clayton. Sadly, I was wrong. What is great about the characters of Gears 5 is that they all get their moment to shine, and we get to see and experience what makes these guys tick and the motivations behind the choices they make. That is not only down to some great acting, but perhaps more crucially great writing and great cutscenes that have time to develop and grow, and to make us root for characters that we may have liked but now love. I'm looking at you, Halo 5. Gameplay innovations are obviously at the forefront of the Gears 5 campaign experience. Enemy factions and weapons are now the most diverse they've ever been in the Gears franchise, thanks to the Coalition's desire to move the franchise forward and to implement more innovation than in Gears 4. Starting with the enemies, the Swarm get a significant upgrade in Gears 5. Scions now act as mini-bosses with higher health stats, and the new biggest and most fearsome Swarm faction, the Warden, joins them. The Warden is particularly challenging to defeat, as you can only damage them with headshots, meaning the player has to be very accurate. All whilst the Warden is charging and slamming his breaker maces to try and turn you into a gooey pile of innards. But perhaps the most well developed and most adaptable new faction is the Flock, which is made up of a vast number of leeches. Taking the Swarm name quite literally, the Flock contains leeches in a synchronised formation, which are hard to kill due to their sheer size and numbers. Individual leeches can detach themselves from the Flock and charge you, dealing damage while you're firing away at the larger Swarm. The true innovation that has been made in Gears 5 by the Coalition is the use of the DBs that were introduced in Gears 4. Now that your squad are back in the COG and no longer fugitives on the run, the DBs are utilised alongside you and not against you. That is until, however, the Flock turns up with the leeches being able to corrupt the DBs and turning the robots against their commanders. This brings some really cool gameplay scenarios such as stealthily executing DBs whilst avoiding detection. However, it also brings all-out chaos in the form of corrupted DR1s that act as scattergun turrets and corrupted bastions that provide the already beefy Scions and Wardens with shields that have to be taken out before even dealing damage to the Swarm soldiers. The innovation doesn't stop there either. New weapons are introduced in the form of the COG Lancer grenade launcher, which packs less ammo and lacks a chainsaw, but is balanced out with a higher accuracy and of course 3 grenades to put into that shiny new launcher. The Claw is a new swarm heavy weapon with an interesting mechanic becoming more accurate the longer you fire it. New flashbang grenades and the melee smasher called the Breaker Maze come in to further add to the already well crafted and well balanced weapon sandbox. And of course we can't forget about Jack. The newly developed robot acts as the player's abilities throughout the campaign. Find components scattered throughout the game and you can upgrade Jack's arsenal of toys. From cloaking to shields to shock traps and more, Jack brings a whole host of active and passive abilities for the player to utilise and spin entire gameplay scenarios on their heads. I did have a gripe with Jack's AI though. At points he was not able to res me quickly as I'd hoped, or in the case of one mission where Kate and Dell had to protect a phosphorus canister that would act as a bomb, Jack would just fly off into the middle of the battle, somewhat unfairly, giving me hardly any chance to hold off enemy swarm with effective covering fire. Speaking of the res mechanic, I felt this was really the only occasion I got frustrated with the game. I felt in certain scenarios there were times when I had been downed, the AI of my squad mates would take forever to res me, if at all, before bleeding out. On the flip side, there were moments where my AI teammates would be downed really easily, making it ridiculously hard for me to res them while staying alive myself. Again, this is just a minor annoyance that I felt needed better balancing whilst playing through the campaign as a single player and not as a co-op of 4. Finally, we're going to get into how Gears 5 starts to set itself apart from the rest of the Gears franchise, and that's mainly down to how the Coalition has developed the world and environment. The biggest change to Gears 5 is the now open world areas of Acts 2 and 3. Kate and Dell traverse the frozen north of Mount Kadar in Act 2 on their newly acquired skiff. JD and Fuzz then join the pair for Act 3 using the skiff to travel across the red sand desert of Vazgar. The open areas act as a pleasant change of pace from the up close and personal close quarter combat of the more tight and linear interior areas of the rest of the game. Another nice touch is the addition of locations to explore for collectibles and resources, alongside optional secondary missions to assist local outsiders and nomads. Bringing in the open world exploration also brings new environmental mechanics that the player has to navigate. The high-powered wind flare storms are continuing to wreak havoc. Having to sprint across open areas whilst giant shards of ice fall from the sky to lightning strikes crystallizing sand into massive glass shards brings a sense of randomness and challenge. The new environments also bring with them mechanics the player can manipulate as well. The best of these were small frozen lakes in Act 2. With a well-placed grenade or a few shots from a hammerburst, these can bring the swarm down into the icy depths and can be used as a clutch play when your back is firmly up against the wall. The biggest standout of the world of Gears 5 is how stunning the graphics are. Now, I know this is fast becoming the standard for gaming in 2019, however, when I'm sitting back and thinking of how beautiful a game is running on my original Xbox One, then you know it's a game of the highest graphical quality. I have no idea how gorgeous the game would look on the Xbox One X, but on my Xbox it was one of the best looking games I've played this generation. Overall, I believe that the Gears 5 campaign is one of, if not the best narrative experiences to be played on Xbox this generation. The Coalition have masterfully crafted a campaign that is packed full of emotion and grit, with many excellently acted and written character moments. It brings in a whole host of innovations that for the most part stick the landing and makes Gears 5 gameplay experience the richest and most diverse it's ever been. Time will tell where the narrative will go from here into Gears 6, but for now Gears 5 has firmly put the Gears franchise in the #1 spot for narrative experiences on the Xbox brand. For now at least.